Hello, my name is Lolo, and welcome to a new Let's Play series. This is Let's Play Section Z and Friends. I got the idea from this for watching another Let's Player by the name of Unplayed a Thing. And he did a very nice retrospective of Space Harrier, of what he called Space Harrier and Friends, which was Space Harrier, its ports, its sequels, and it's not quite so sequels, but kind of games that had either a direct influence on or games of that nature. So I figured I can do something with a game that is very near and dear to my heart. Now, before I go into what exactly Section Z is, let's have a brief little history lesson. In 1985, Capcom released the arcade game Section Z. It was a neat little game in which you pilot a little red guy in a jetpack who can shoot down aliens, and you went about this space station that was orbiting Earth that had its parts labeled sections A through Z. Now, some neat things about it was you had a button that lets you turn around and shoot enemies behind you, whereas most games of that nature only let you shoot in one direction. It also, much like Konami's Salamander or Life Force, scrolled in multiple directions. Some areas scrolled sideways, some went up and down. It was not exactly a hit, and not exactly the greatest game of 1985, but it was still decent, and it was a nice change of pace compared to other horizontal / any shmup. It's very rare to have you pilot a person rather than just some generic starship. This is not the version of Section Z that this LP will first focus on. Before I talk about which version we will be playing, let's talk about the game's pseudo-sequel, Sidearms: Hyperdyne. Now, Sidearms isn't explicitly ever referred to as Section Z2, but there are some gameplay mechanics that are very similar, and it is somewhat thematically similar. Rather than playing a lonely space ranger, you are this kind of Gundam-ish mech thing that has kind of almost a Gradius-style power bar that you could select what kind of weapons you want. You have a standard normal shot. You almost have an even rotating options kind of shield shot. You have your shotgun style shot, kind of the standards, what we would consider standard shmup affair of that time. Now, while Section Z had the ability of you pressing a button to turn around, Sidearms very much streamlined it in that you would press one button to shoot left and one button to shoot right, compared to the almost Defender-like mechanics of the original Section Z. There will also be these set of 4 enemies that would appear that would serve as your couriers of power-ups. This game was released a year later in 1986. Also released in 1986 was the Famicom Disk System. Now, Capcom only produced a couple games for the Famicom Disk System, others being a port of the arcade game Gun.Smoke, and also a text adventure by the name of Samurai Sword. However, one of the other games that they released for the system was a game labeled Section Z. The reason I mentioned this now rather than right after I mentioned the arcade version of Section Z is that this game is actually less a port of Section Z than a kind of combination of Section Z and Sidearms with some weird maze traversal. The Famicom Disk System was a game system that was a breeding ground of some very odd ideas, and since it's so technically relatively early in the video game's life, as a whole lifestyle, some genre standards haven't been set. So you have this game that is a shmup that plays somewhere to sidearms where you control a character and you can shoot left or right by hitting B and A, but also go through this kind of labyrinth of tree-like kind of mazes where you come across warps that take you to different parts of this giant space station. Yeah, it's a bit weird to have a kind of almost open-ended shmup. It also breaks away from the standard arcade formula of dying as soon as you get hit by having an energy system. And it does also have a live system, but the live system doesn't act the way you think it would. In fact, your energy is practically your lives, and it gets a little confusing. But once you actually start to play it, everything starts to make sense. Other neat mechanics include different weapons that you can find, and actually a secret weapon that only occurs under very particular circumstances, and a sub-weapon system that lets you use some of your excess energy in order to shoot missiles or make a smart bomb, which should be more powerful than it ends up being, but that's just kind of how it is. Now, this was released early in 1987, and later that year, the US and Europe also got their version of Section Z. There are a couple of reasons why the length of time between the Japanese release and the European and US English release is that there's like 2 sentences in the entire game that are actually in Japanese. And even if you don't know Japanese, they're relatively easy to understand what they're trying to say. There was really only one other thing that Capcom had to deal with, and actually Capcom Solutions ended up being one of this game's major downfalls, at least in the US and European release. You see, in the Japanese version, you had save slots. Think of like the 3-slot system in Zelda that a lot of games on the Famicom Disk System use because it's a disc, so you can write to it. Cartridges you can't write to cartridges like you can with discs. So rather than doing the expensive save systems that the cartridge versions of Zelda had, or a password systems like some games that had save systems in Japan ended up getting, Capcom took the easy route and had no saving system or password system at all. You must beat Section Z and the US and European releases in one sitting. Now, the game isn't exactly long, but that's a pretty long game to play in one sitting. And it kind of ended up being kind of a bad thing because it was really hard to beat it on an actual cartridge. And even though we now have emulators and such, I will actually be playing the Japanese version. Not only so that I can show off what the game was originally meant to be like, I figured I can show it off because people might just be familiar with the US and European releases. So there isn't a whole lot of difference, but it's still something different. That being said, let's get on with the game. Being that this is a Famicom Disk System game, might as well show off the BIOS. If you are not familiar with the Famicom Disk System, watch this nice series made by someone named Lolo to Puzlo about what the Famicom Disk System is. Also, it's essentially a disk drive for the Famicom. You had to boot up into this little screen when you first started up in order to insert the disk. Now there's a slight loading screen, and I'm just going to use this little time to talk about kind of my experience with this game. This was not one of the games that I originally had, but it was one that I would rent. Actually, to hear this song that's playing right now. I just remember renting this game so often because I really like this piece of music. One difference between this version and the US version is that right now there would be a kind of an interact mode where you could see the person play and end up dying. For some reason they added that. I'm not sure why, just maybe to give it kind of the arcade feel. But yeah, this is pretty much as much story as really this game kind of deserves, I guess. It's rather simple. You play as some random space ranger trying to kind of solve or eliminate evil from the space station. And here you can see the save system. I'm just going ahead to delete. Those were actually save states that were kind of already in the disk as I opened it up. Those weren't mine. You don't get you kind of have to loop around for letters for your name entry, which is kind of annoying, but at least you have something to put your name with. Also, sometimes you get special characters. This is not one of those games. And yes, as a Famicom Disk System game, there are loading times. Not that many, and they're relatively short. And here's a nice little cutscene that says, oh, something's going on. Let's go investigate. And now we're on to the actual game. Well, once we flip the side. If you are not familiar with how Famicom discs actually are, they're two-sided discs that have 64 kilobytes roughly on each side. And here we get into the actual game. You press A to shoot right and B to shoot left. One thing I would recommend if you decide to actually play this game, get yourself a controller that can rapid fire, because I'm not using it in this run, and it's kind of painful. It'd be doing much better if I would do much better if I had one, but hey, that's how I actually played this. I do actually own a disc copy of this game, and I have actually beaten it on there. It's most certainly possible to beat without a rapid fire controller. It's just one of those games that can really get you sore. Now, here we have this game's main gimmick. At the end of each kind of sub-stage, there is a two-way warp. Obviously, one takes you to one place, the bottom one, or the other one, takes you to the other place. Unfortunately, there's no real indication on where you're gonna go, other than just going through it a whole bunch of times. But yeah, that's kind of an issue with this game if you are not looking at a map. Or if you just don't like that kind of game, but I kind of liked it as a kid. It was kind of neat having to oh, now I have to kind of remember where I need to go, kind of almost like a dungeon crawler, but not quite. It's a bit simpler than that, although sometimes later on that can get a little tricky, and here we have something interesting. That's a red teleporter. That will kill you if you touch it. The way to make it not kill you is to kind of do the main objective of the game, which is to destroy generators, which is what we're currently trying to get to right now. The game is divided into 3 areas. Each area has 2 generators and a boss. Sometimes there's bosses in between, but that's the main gist. Now, sometimes the generators might be bosses themselves, but yeah. Also, one thing you might have noticed, now that I've actually started to take damage, that E out of number is indeed my health. And you notice I got touched by something and I instantly died, even though I had energy remaining. Basically, if you take contact damage, also we picked up a weapon, it's kind of a spread gun, and if you can kind of hear the sound effects in the background, you can hear me try and press the button more, or faster than I can actually shoot this thing, which is kind of annoying. But with this many enemies on the screen, also another thing you might not have picked up, there are hidden warps in this game. If you shoot either the top or bottom of the screen at certain points in subsections, a warp will appear and take you to some place, or it'll be some sort of special room. Whether it have items in it, whether it have health pickups in it, whether it have one of your sub-weapons in it, that kind of depends upon which one you go to. And there's no real indication of where and what is in them. Now here we're about to come to a very special warp. Because this room actually houses one of our sub-weapons. And a bit of a spoiler, I kind of forgot to actually show off the mechanic, but I'll show it off next video. You only start out with one sub-weapon, However, once we go in here, we'll find another sub-weapon. This is the flash bomb, which is essentially a smart bomb. The way you kind of do your sub-weapons is that since B shoots left, A shoots right, if you press B and A at the same time, a little picture of whatever sub-weapon you've kind of selected, and as you hit A, B multiple times, you'll kind of select different ones. If you kind of make your character go over the icon, you'll actually activate it. The first one you start out with is a missile, which uses up 5 health and shoots a very powerful missile in the direction you next shoot after you pick up the missile. And the flash bomb, I can't exactly remember off the top of my head how much energy it takes, but we'll find out next video. And there's one other weapon we will find and in the next video, but we'll get to that when we get to that. As you can kind of see right there, I kind of got myself lost going in a loop. It's kind of the issue of not knowing where exactly the warps take you. I should kind of point out how the you'll occasionally see enemies drop either a little orange thing or a S. If you've probably already seen me pick it up, the orange thing is a health up, which gives you 3 energy back. You can't actually shoot the warp, and you could go back in it, but it'll have nothing because we already got the thing that's in it. The S is a speed up. Now, it kind of works in like how most games speed up is. You kind of go up as you get more speed ups. You'll get more faster. If you pick up enough of those, you can get like go maximum thing in radius speed of how fast you can go to be completely uncontrollable. Now, what you see me do here, I actually got rid of the spread weapon because we are actually about to fight a generator. With these enemies, they kind of just spawn on things, so what I like to do is just wait for them all to spawn and just shoot them so that they can't shoot as many projectiles because just limits of the NES. Which also, by the way, you can kind of see in the top right, there's an L and cursors on it. That is your weapon select. If, unfortunately, I don't have any other weapons, so I can't really, select anything because I don't have anything. And this is pretty much how every generator fight goes. The thing just stands there and it'll shoot, alternating between just standard bullets and bullets that kind of trap you. And you basically have to use the terrain to kind of dodge the homing projectiles. Those are the main threat. And after you beat a generator and a boss, and after each boss, you get this little pickup which will give you more health. Unfortunately, it doesn't fill your health, but it'll at least increase your maximum. Now that we've defeated the generator, defeating generators do one of 2 things. One, and the main reason, is that previously locked door, or that red teleporter, that will now turn into a green door that we can go to without dying, and take us to a different part of the area that we could not get to before. Also, it will cause enemies to behave slightly differently. The little turret things that are on the top and bottom of the stage will now kind of fling towards us, as you'll see right here. Enemies will change depending upon which generator you just killed and kind of how far you are. And they'll be like this for the rest of the game, which is kind of interesting. Also, I should have mentioned the barrier when I got it. I went into a warped, one of the warps I got to had a barrier in it. The barrier is like a radius barrier. It only sticks in front of you, and it will block something like 36 shots or something like that. It's really, you obviously kind of want it whenever you can. it's just something really good to have. And also those little Metroid-like enemies. Also, you can kind of tell after each death you lose your speed up. You also lose your weapon. But since I was just using the laser, you don't see that. Yeah, this area is kind of brutal. And you can hear I've kind of lost all my lives. But that doesn't really do anything. Because as you'll see, when I hit continue, I'm just back to where I left off. And the only thing that's really happened is I lost energy and my score went away. I kind of think that the only reason why this game even has lives to begin with is to act as a way that as you lose all your lives, that gives you kind of a chance to save, because you can't, that's the only way you can actually save your progress. I don't know. It's why there's even score to begin with, like, this is around the same time that Mega Man 1 had a score in it. I don't know why they even had that in. Also, I am at the brink of death, and this is not good. Now, right here is a very neat weapon. It is the Mega Smasher, and it does something very neat. It pierces through enemies. It is the weapon you want to have pretty much on at all times. There's no benefit of not having it equipped. As you'll see, I'll just pierce straight through those enemies and instantly die. And here's what happens when you lose all your energy. The game screen crashes, it makes a really irritating noise, and you're back to the beginning of the area. Yeah, that can be quite annoying if it's a later area and you're kind of far, but with the whole fact that as you go, you unlock you beat the generators and unlock kind of faster ways to get to later parts of the area, it's not as bad as it could be, but it's still kind of annoying. And it also only puts you at 20 health, which is kind of one of those things like with Legend of Zelda, how it only puts you at 3 hearts after a continue. This kind of one of those old school kind of thing, we only put it at the amount that you start the game out with. And I figure while I actually work back, let's kind of take a look at some of the other areas. Now, the good thing is we got the Mega Smasher, and we died. Yeah, that kind of sucks, because as you'll kind of see, that thing does not respawn. I don't know exactly what caused it to respawn, but yeah, that's kind of annoying that it isn't there, and now I've just completely lost that thing, but then again, it's my fault, I shouldn't have gotten hit. Also, this game can get bullet helly, which once you get to later parts of the areas and you have so much health, it's not quite too bad, but still, the fact that your hitbox is so huge, and the fact that, you're so huge, kind of makes it so that it's kind of annoying to dodge. But you can have so much health that it doesn't really matter. One nice thing is the fact that if it hits you, or if it's a bullet that hits you and doesn't instantly kill you, it'll only do 1 damage. There's no bullets that'll do like 2 damage or like 3 damage. It'll always just be 1 damage, which is pretty nice. Now, the Mega Smasher should have been there, but it wasn't, which leads me to believe if I restarted like from the save, would then that make it spawn? That's be kind of odd. But now we're back to where we ended up getting worked back, having much more health this time, and I'm gonna leave the spreadshot on for a little bit more. And yeah, now it's about time for the laser. And let's see what kind of terrain this generator has this time. This one's an absolute pain to actually like fight legitimately. So I took the fact that I had so much health kind of and I'm not even gonna bother trying to fight this. I try fighting it a little bit strategically, but that ain't gonna work. So basically just put yourself against a wall and just keep on firing until it dies. Took quite a bit of damage, but still ended up winning the fight, which is all you need to do. Now here we immediately found the door. We actually found the generator before we actually found the door we need the generator for. Can't exactly remember what the enemy difference is after I beat that generator, but yeah, we're not going to have much of a chance to see what it is. Now, there's a warp there. Didn't see what it was, but don't think it was anything necessary. And now we got a barrier, which is really nice because so every area is 20 sections long. And since we've practically seen everything except for section 19, we are actually about to fight the boss of the area, which you can tell by the fact that, well, that's a special looking warp. And we are cautioned, we are attacking the heavy destroyer. I don't know why they put that there, but yeah, that's kind of their funny loading screen. And there's no enemies in section 19 except for this guy, who is the boss. This guy's absolutely, like, basically you can't hurt him until he kind of opens up, and he'll occasionally shoot out this swarm of bullets that, unless you're not in front of him, there's really no reason why you would even get shot by this guy. He's a complete joke. Which is kind of good because I don't have the greatest amount of health. And yeah, even with the standard laser, he is absolutely a chump and died relatively quickly. But he is going to go this weird explosion animation, drop a health, and as soon as we get the health, that is Area 1 complete. And we get this wonderful screen, which I have no idea why it's like this. Basically, we have 44 and also you can see that the crush ball is going to be one of the sub weapons that we will get. And now we're into Area 2, but Area 2 is not for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will be looking forward to play more of Section Z, as it is a game I really enjoy. Thank you.